Well, as a writer, I think I see in the South what's the essential, because I take what I know as for granted. So I see the new as the new and the old as the old, and I feel I'm a judge because my eye has been trained by experience. So I know where I am. I have a base to see people moving in their true light.
We're in Jackson, Mississippi at the home of Eudora Welty. It is a National Historic Landmark, and Eudora Welty was a writer who was born in 1909 and died in 2001. She was a writer who won just about every literary prize there was to receive other than the Nobel. She is studied throughout the world, really, published in many languages. She wrote some short novels. She is probably best known for her short stories.
Yeah, that was the form that she most valued, was the short story form. So she has 4 collections of short stories, some of which are not that short, totaling just under 50 stories in those 4 collections.
And then there is One Writer's Beginnings, which is a short, it's actually the story, Eudora's life from the time she was born, growing up in Jackson, till the time of her publication of her first story. And it's very entertaining. Of course, I personally love that one, but also The Optimist's Daughter is her novel that won the Pulitzer Prize. She wrote anywhere. I mean, she could write, as we said, in a car, anywhere, but most of her writing she did here, and she would fine-tune it here.
This home was designated as a landmark in 2004. The house opened to the public for tours in 2006. I haven't even been here 2 years, but I can't tell you how many times people have said to me in a tour how they would come down here just to hear her typing away. And they did, they often did. So, because she'd have the windows open upstairs and it was an old manual typewriter. So, so she did quite a bit of work here.
This is much like her room when she was here writing. She had her typewriter. She would make notes on anything available. The back of a checkbook, little scraps of paper.
An address book.
The address book, it was, she would jot down names as she heard them. And she could be on a bus, or she could be in the beauty parlor or the grocery store, or she'd see something and she'd think of a name, or she'd hear a name, and she'd jot these names down. And then by some of the names she has real. So she would know not to use the whole name in the story because it was a real person. She loved Jackson. She felt like she always, that she could write anywhere, but she knew the people here. And I think she liked writing here because they respected her and they gave her her privacy. She could go to the grocery store and they wouldn't bother her. They really liked her, and she was quite a, you would go into a restaurant and you'd see the heads turn as she walked, to her table. Everybody would be punching everybody, oh, there's Eudora Welty. But she knew the people. If you read her stories, you see how observant she was, people's traits, their way they said things. She never wrote about per se anyone in Jackson, but she knew the people of Mississippi. She was invited to go to Yaddo, which is an artist colony, writers colony in New York, and she really didn't like it. I mean, there were a lot of writers there, but as she said, they expect you to go to your room and write, and that's not how she wrote. For example, the story of Why I Live at the P.O., she happened to walk into a country post office and she saw an ironing board in a post office, and she thought, huh, yeah, that's kind of
what if someone lived here?
So the story developed. The Whistle, which is a story about people burning everything they own to save their crops. She was spending the night with a friend in the country. In the middle of the night, she hears a whistle and asked her friend, what was that? And she said, oh, there's going to be a freeze tonight. That's to let the farmers know to cover their crops. So she, just everyday happening. She was just observant, and that's a story would develop. Eudora, when she wrote, she would write out the story, she would type it out, and then she would read it, and she would decide to edit it. And these are facsimiles, so we can touch them here. And she would read it, and much like a seamstress, she would cut out a strip and say, oh, it goes better here, and then she would change a few words and pin it in. It was easy to move around by just pinning. Eudora saved everything she ever wrote. So we have every draft at the Mississippi Department of Archives and History, which is wonderful for researchers. They can go back and they can decide, let's see, why did she change this word to this word, and through her thought process. But, of course, it's a nightmare for the Department of Archives and History because all of these are loose things and they had to hand sew them in. But unlike today when writers, they do it on a computer and they do it the next version and the first version is gone. But we have all the edits, and these are copies of just a mere sampling.
I can't say what her legacy is, but to me, just her mastery of the short story form, particularly as it relates to dealing with the internal life that people often don't talk about, but it's there. She really, her powers of description are amazing. I mean, not only the physical description of nature, but also just the interior dramas that are going on within the individual, but also between close individuals. It's extraordinary.
But I think the Southerner is a talker by nature, but not only a talker, we're used to an audience, we're used to a listener. And that does something to our narrative style, I think.